Hi everyone, welcome to a tactics video, this time how to maximise mortal wounds in Astra Militarum Imperial Guard. This is actually a rerun of a video I did last night where I got several rules wrong, and thanks to those subscribers who called it out to me, so I've got the benefit now of me actually getting the rules right. So if you're new to the channel, I cover everything Astra Militarum from a law point of view, bringing my military experience in the Australian Army as a rifleman into this to give a unique perspective of what it'd be like to be an Imperial Guardsman. A tactics point of view, where I bring a relaxed but competitive approach to 40k, and also building, assembling, painting and kit bash videos as well. So this video is one in a series of videos where I've done how to actually use units on the tabletop. Less about the individual unit data sheets, but more how to actually use the unit overall, such as limited rust battle tanks, transports, battle line, deep striking units, and also scout move most recently. So check out this playlist here, whichever side it pops up. For those videos. So as said, it's more about how to use it overall as opposed to individual units. Now, for that being said, in this video, we'll focus on a couple of key units to basically make it rain mortal wounds on your opponent from a fun point of view. So quickly, what are mortal wounds? For those of you that are new to 40k, and just sort of a refresher for those that aren't super clear. So basically, think of a mortal wound as a wound that basically ignores the hit, the wound, and the saving throw. It just goes straight through and does damage. As you can see here, taken from the rulebook, each mortal wound inflicted on a model causes one model in that unit to lose one wound. So that unit and a model within that unit. No saving throws can be made against mortal wounds, and mortal wounds inflicted by attacks always apply after any normal damage, even if that damage was saved. Yeah. Don't forget, of course, if your opponent's got a feel no pain, they can still roll their feel no pain against that mortal wound, but they can't basically roll their saving throw. You don't have to roll a wound roll, don't have to roll a hit roll. So actually, mathematically, they cut through loads of the math and statistics of 40k and the chance, and basically just do instant damage. Okay, so the two main ways to apply mortal wounds for Astra Militarum, and there's some other key ones we'll speak about in a bit of detail, is two stratagems. So obviously tank grenade and tank shock. Now these are the updated stratagems I actually got from the right place. So grenade, basically one grenade unit, and that's a grenade keyword unit from your army, excluding units that have advanced, fell back, or have shot this turn, that is not within engagement range of one or more enemy units, can basically throw a grenade, and therefore within 8 inches and visible to that grenade unit on a 4-up from 6 dice to suffer a mortal wound. Yeah, so some key wording there is basically you kind of advanced, fallen back, or have a shot yet this turn. So you basically have to throw the grenades first and then you can shoot. And of course you can't be within engagement range of one or more enemy units, and as said, within 8 inches, which is relatively close. It's not necessarily like a 24-inch, las gun range. It's quite close and intimate. And obviously on a 4-up across 6 dice, they can suffer a mortal wound. And obviously a maximum of 6 mortal wounds, 3 or 4 on average. And it costs you 1 command point. The other one is then tank shock. This applies to vehicles. So a vehicle unit. Select one enemy unit within engagement range of your unit, and select a vehicle model in that unit that's within engagement range, and roll a d6 equal to the toughness of that vehicle. And on a 5-up, they suffer a mortal wound. So obviously, this will work best when you've got high toughness. We've got plenty of high toughness models in Astra Militarum, such as limited rust battle tanks, toughness 11, Rogue Dawn's toughness 12, and also, of course, a Baneblade at toughness 13. So, of course, you can use this on any vehicle, everything from the humble Scout Sentinel, toughness 7, to a Baneblade, toughness 13. But of course, the higher the toughness, the more dice you roll, the higher chance you are actually going to deliver a whole lot of mortal wounds, because a 5-up on 13 dice is a much higher chance than a 5-up on 7 dice. But these are the two main ways basically Guard can maximise mortal wound output. So the grenade stratagem, you have to have the grenade keyword, and obviously tank shock applies to vehicles. So previously I made a couple of errors in sort of basically talking about the sequencing of the grenade stratagem. So as per some corrections, some friends of mine, also some of you out there, is that basically you have to throw the grenade stratagem first, and then you can shoot, and then you can decide where you're going to shoot after, yeah? Cool, so let's get on to grenade. So, this hit me last couple of months, is that across the Astra Militarum codex now, loads of units have got the grenade keyword. And having spoken to other people playing different armies, such as, I don't know, let's say for example, Tau, even Space Marines, is not necessarily something they have a lot of access to. Now, I've only ever really played guard in the last, gosh, I think like 6 years now. A little bit of custodies, but I always took it for granted, the grenade keyword, till I started dabbling with other armies and basically realized that they don't always have the grenade keyword. So across the codex, and this is just a collection of snippets here, roughly 7 characters have got the grenade keyword. So that's all of the 4 command squads, the Militarum Tempestus, the Catechin, the Def Corps, and the Cadian. Is then going to be models like Sly Marbo, the Menestorum Priest, even as a grenade keyword, not that you're going to play that model that much, and a couple of other ones as well. So actually a lot of characters have got the grenade keyword. Then of course our 3 battle line units, Cadian, Def Corps, and Catechin, have all got the grenade keyword. And then across the rest of the stuff, such as infantry-based models and also mounted, basically Def Corps, Rough Riders, Bolgrams, Ogrins, Rattling Snipers now have it, Kasrkin, Scions, Tempestus Aquilans, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some other ones as well. So loads of units in our codex have got the grenade keyword. So that's really bloody good. So that means that you've always got the option to basically use a stratagem of grenade. And as we get to sort of, you know, the pros and cons of this stratagem, it's definitely something I would recommend that you always try and think about and always try and use. And basically currently, we've got just a new codex, the main stratagems I personally always use are tank shock and grenade. And of course, it's going to change a lot now with the new codex. There's a lot more options, but they're very, very good stratagems to use. Yeah, so loads and loads of them have got basically the grenade keyword. So let's now then talk about what won't mortal wounds do. Okay, just like the other videos, I always talk about like the negatives and the positives, and then go for a couple of key examinations. So what won't they do is they're not guaranteed to go off. Yeah, so as you saw, the grenade stratagem goes off on a 4-up, 50% chance actually going to go off. That's not amazing odds. 50% is still a coin flip. And obviously tank shock at a 5-up is only a 33% chance, so 1 in 3 obviously. So it's not guaranteed to go off. Now, as we'll look at in a moment, there are a couple of key units in the codex which have basically improved odds of making mortal wounds go off. Now, that also being said, you're not going to do tons of damage via mortal wounds. I mean, okay, if you throw a grenade in your turn and do tank shock, you're going to do, let's just agree, 7 mortal wounds. Now, that's fantastic, and as we'll look at a key positive in a moment, obviously it's very good, but it's not crippling damage like, I don't know, if a Rogue or Dawn hitting on 3s, you get loads of hits, loads of shots, loads of wounds, and they fail loads of saves. It's almost like the potential for damage on these 2 stratagems is only actually 12 wounds across the 2 stratagems, if that makes sense. So not loads of damage, but remember, it's always about a death by 1,000 cuts in 40k, particularly when you're playing guard. Also, they don't cost you nothing. You need to spend command points to make this happen. And again, there's some key exceptions we'll look at in a moment, and there's some ways to basically make these stratagems for free with a key model, but you have to pay command points. And just like everything in 40k, you know, CP is a precious resource. You get, you know, 2 CP every round. There are ways to engineer more, but do remember that you're not just basically spending it for free, versus say when you shoot the weapon on a unit, that is for free. Obviously you pay the points cost, but it doesn't cost you any command points or anything more than just beyond rolling dice to make it happen. And as said, this doesn't really have much of it doesn't have a long range. You're not like you're shooting a Lasgun 24 or a pulverizer cannon or whatever the main cannon is on the Rogue or Dawn, 48 inches or 72 inches, whatever it is. You need to be typically up quite close and personal. So within 8 inches, obviously is not ages away, and obviously tank shock means you need to be basically charging into your opponent to do the stratagem. So it does require you to get quite intimate with your opponent in inverted commas. Okay, so what are the positives? What will they do? So as said, they skip the hit, the wound, and the saving throw. So I'm not going to try and engineer like a mathematical example, but you know, if you're hitting on 4s, wounding on 5s, or saving on a 3, that's probably way worse odds of actually doing any damage than rolling the grenade stratagem and wounding on a 4-up, where it just goes straight through, yeah? So this is almost the power of it, is that it sort of skips a load of the math and just goes straight into basically applying instant damage. Now this is a key one. I think this is a really good one to sort of think about, is that these stratagems allow you to do damage into things you normally couldn't damage. So the prime example would be 10 jungle fighters or 10 Cadian shock throwing a grenade into a demon prince. Because if they shot all their las guns and maybe some special weapons, the chance of them doing any damage at all to that demon prince is probably 0, to be mathematically realistic. But if you throw a grenade, you do 3 mortal wounds, that's basically 3 wounds that you probably couldn't have done in the first place because you're just shooting las guns and flamers, for example. The other one, of course, is then with tank shock. If you're charging, well, all Astra Militarum vehicles in combat are pretty bad, hitting on 4s with 6 attacks typically. Granted, they're typically strength 7, AP 0, but let's agree that Astra Militarum tanks aren't good in combat in melee, but by tank shocking, you are being quite effective in combat because you're going to do up to 6 mortal wounds. So that's really good one, I think, to sort of remember, is that it gives you a way to damage things you normally couldn't do with that unit. Yeah, now, as also said, it's a chance to do loads of chip damage. So again, you know, Astra Militarum, I think, is an army where you want to basically sort of always be making sure that every single weapon you've got on the tabletop has the chance to actually do damage. I found personally that if you rely upon one unit to delete something, it's never guaranteed. There are certain units now, particularly Bridgehead Strike Force, which can drop down the scions and blast things to bits, but outside of that, I would say Steel Guard is an army where you're not guaranteed the dice will always help you. You could be hitting on 3s, you miss all that. You could be, you know, wounding on 3s, you fail all that, and they're saving on a 4-up, for example, from Limitless Battle Tank, and suddenly you do no damage. So you want to make sure there's always ways to sort of back up that damage output. And mortal wounds are a great way to do that. Now, there are some ways to do this out of line of sight. There's 2 very key units. One's a new one in the new codex, and obviously one's a bit older, but these are very, very good. Basically indirect mortal wounds, and we'll discuss that in a second. And as I said, there are multiple ways to do this for free. There is now a key unit which basically can do it for free, and also then there's some supporting characters and also a specific piece of war gear which loads of units have got, which can basically mean you're doing stratagems for free. Yeah, so let's now get on to key units. Now, again, as I said in the other videos, I don't typically go into the exact individual units, but in this one it's relevant. So the 2 key units to speak about, let's add Kasrkin to my dictionary, is Kasrkin 110 points for 10 models. Now, within that, obviously, you get, they can order themselves, which is very good. They get loads of special weapons, a sniper rifle, and blah, 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 so super cool. But the key thing, which is basically the mortal wounds, is the melter mine. So the melter mine is represented by the model with the actual mine, with the big flash suit, which is super cool. And once per battle at the start of any phase, you can select a unit within 3 inches of the bearer. And on 1d6 on a 2-up, they suffer d3 mortal wounds, or 2d3 if it's a vehicle unit. Yeah, so this is a very powerful strategy, a very powerful ability. 3 inches, though, is quite short. It's 5 inches less than grenade, obviously. But nothing in here says you need to be able to see the target. Yeah, so granted 3 inches, you could actually throw that 3 inch, that you could basically hit units behind a wall, for example. Go to Tabletop Simulator in a second and just sort of illustrate it, bring it to life. But the best thing is here, you don't have to be visible to the target. Also, at the start of any phase, so any phase is your turn, your opponent's turn, and this could be, as obviously it says, beginning of the command phase, beginning of the movement phase, the shooting phase, the charge phase, whatever it is. So this is where, and again we'll look on TTS to sort of bring it to life, is that you want to be quite deliberate where you put this individual miniature, because if maybe you're trying to push the unit out, you want to put that model first to get have the best chance of actually doing mortal wounds, and likewise when you take casualties, when you're pulling units away from the models away from the unit, you leave this guy last on the battlefield. So at least if your opponent charges that unit, you pop it off. You could do 3 mortal wounds and kill 1 or 2 models, which would be fantastic. So Kasrkin are definitely a unit. I think they're personally, I think they're really good now. Definitely not commenting too much on the overall sort of new codex, but I do think that Tempestus Signs have sort of lost their shine, unless you're playing Bridgehead Strike Force, because you've lost the reroll hits. And probably Kasrkin are sort of an alternate unit, because they've got loads of special weapons, they can self-order, and they've also got this nice little mortal wound bomb as well, Melter. Now the next key unit is the Dev Corps Engineers, the new shiny super cool looking dudes for the new codex relaunch. You can either pay 70 for 5 or 95 for 10. So the reason for this logic here is that the reason why it's not 140 for 10 is simply that when you bring an additional 5, you're getting 5 guys with combat shotguns. Yeah, so when you buy 5 up front or pay for 5, you get the sergeant who can take a power sword and a flame pistol, plus other war gear options, a flamer dude or grenade dude. The actual guy operates the remote mine, and then 2 chaps with shotguns. So by bringing the extra 5, you're just bringing more bodies on the tabletop. So actually, for another 25 points, it's not too bad, but I'm probably just going to stick with this for now. Now, the reason why it's 70 points for 5, and it does feel quite expensive on paper, is twofold. So firstly, the remote mine. So once per battle at the start of your shooting phase, not any phase, your shooting phase, select an enemy unit within 12 of the bearer, so nothing but visibility, and on a D6, on a 3-up, they suffer D6 mortal wounds, or D3+3 if it's a vehicle or fortification. So just like the melter mine, you don't have to see them. You have to be within 12, which actually is quite far. And basically you're going to send off this little remote mine like a cyclist demolition vehicle chasing towards your opponent, pulls up next to him and then explodes. So that is absolutely fantastic. Now, a 3-up is less guaranteed than a 2-up, but even a 2-up, I've rolled numerous 1s on my melter mine, so it does definitely happen. But a 3-up obviously is a much better chance than the grenade strategy going off on a 4-up and obviously tank shock. So here, whilst I did say it's not guaranteed to go off, here we've got 2 specific pieces of war gear where your chances of actually doing mortal wounds are quite high. Yeah, you know, going off on a 3-up is 66% chance, going off on a 2-up is a 88% chance, I think, roughly mathematic-wise. I could get that wrong, but this is obviously very, very good. So, you know, 2d3 into vehicles here, or D3+3, is very cheeky. And obviously, you know, even D3 or D6 could basically pick off a character if you could basically engineer that. Now, Death Corps engineers then, of course, also have another one called Grenadiers, where once per turn, you can basically use the grenade stratagem fold free. So absolutely fantastic. And that is essentially, I think what you're paying for here is the chance to do a load of mortal wounds via the remote mine. But then fundamentally, given this is once per turn, and if this unit did survive 5 turns and you did get to do this 5 times, that basically is saving you 5 command points. Now, of course, I'm not probably going to survive 5 turns, but conceptually, you know, you can probably think you've got an extra 2 or maybe 1 or 2 CP saved with this unit basically throwing grenades twice, let's just say, over the course of a game. So very, very powerful here. Now, another good thing we worked with both of these units is they both have the scout move ability. So before you roll off, before the game begins, you can basically scout move these chap 6 and check out this video here, which talks about scout moves, how to basically maximize those. And it's very good to sort of set up the overall game plan, get these guys and girls a bit further out to maximize the chance of actually doing loads of mortal wounds. So these are definitely 2 specific units where their war gear does make getting mortal wounds out a much better chance than either doing it through grenade or tank shock. Okay, next is then 2 more key, 1 key unit, 1 piece of war gear. Now, I got this wrong last night, but Ursula Creed, what isn't wrong is once per battle round, once per battle round, 1 friendly regiment unit within 12 can be targeted via a stratagem for 0 CP, even if another unit from your army has already been targeted at the stratagem this phase. Now, this has been changed, and if you're not super close to 40k rules, they often adjust the rules. And in the recent, well, in a balanced data slate, it actually stipulates now stratagems that can be used more than once per turn phase, basically explains here that unless the stratagem is specifically called out in the wording here, you can't use it twice. So I incorrectly said last night that basically this would allow you to use the grenade stratagem twice. So you could basically say, for example, use it with the Grenadiers for free. And then you could have Ursula Creed within 12 inches of another unit who throw grenades, and that would be allowed. So this actually is not allowed because of the new rule change. And I think actually this is probably 6 months old now, so it's a bit of a bad one by me. But the key thing is you can't use grenade stratagems twice. However, what it does, obviously, the reason why I show this is that you may not decide to take Death Corps engineers, maybe don't want to buy the models or use a unit, but this obviously means that within 12 of Ursula, you can be using grenades for free. Obviously, one stratagem used per per round or per turn, but that's still very, very good. Now, as we'll talk about quickly on Tabletop Simulator, just having the unit within 12 means obviously you could basically string out a load of chaps to basically conga line to make sure they're within 12 of Ursula, to basically use any stratagems, including grenades, for free. So a very, very powerful way to basically make sure you've got loads of CP across the course of your 5 turns. Then, of course, Voxcaster. Now, this is basically in loads of units. I've got the Voxcaster war gear ability. And obviously, when you use a stratagem on a 5-up or a 4-up, if you're within 6 inches of an officer, officer includes all the tank commanders, regular Dawn tank commanders, infantry officers. On a 4-up, you save your CP. So the cool little jank you could do here is you could basically have a unit within 12 of Ursula. They use the grenade stratagem for free. And then on a 4-up here, or a 5-up, if you're within 6 of an officer, you basically refund that CP. So a cheeky little way to do it, you could actually give yourself additional CP. But do remember, in the overall rules, that you can only give yourself +1 CP in any way at all once per battle round. So if you do this once and you get that CP basically refunded to you, get it for free, you can't do that again in that round. Yeah, so do make sure, don't give yourself way too much CP, because this can get quite silly if you're using stratagems all over the place and you only got a 4-up, then you've got suddenly 10 CP in turn 3. Just pretend that's not how it works. But this is very, very strong. As I said, these stratagems do cost you CP, grenade and tank shock. But if you are basically throwing grenade within 12 of Ursula, or you're tank shocking with some scout sentinels or armored sentinels, which have got the regiment keyword, suddenly these stratagems are -1, which cost you no command point. So a great way to sort of engineer that. Right, now onto tank shock. This is pretty basic, but as I said, the key units to be using tank shock on are Leman Russ battle tanks toughness 11, Rogal Dawn's toughness 12, and Baneblade's toughness 13 if you do manage to use those on the tabletop. Of course, you can use Hellhound's toughness 10, Chimera's toughness 9, Torok's toughness 8, as said, Scout Sentinel's toughness 7, but clearly rolling 12 dice, doing mortal wounds on a 5-up is a much better chance than doing it on 7 dice, where the chances of that are probably going to give you 2 dice at best, versus probably on a Dawn you're going to get 4 or 5 maybe. So yeah, so do look out for this. Tank shock is a very effective stratagem. I think as we go to Tabletop Simulator very quickly to bring that to life, there will be several scenarios you need to sort of take that judgment call. Basically, imagine if you've put loads of DACA into a unit, you've basically killed off, say, 4 or 6 very angry melee models, and there's only 2 left, and maybe you do tank shock and it's got 3 wounds per model, and just killing off that single model then basically means that last model, after you understand the output they can do, will definitely not kill your Rogue or Dawn in combat, and that therefore takes away 1 piece of your opponent's army from actually doing actions or contesting objectives or moving in the tabletop. But this is pretty straightforward with tank shock, is basically keep it for typically the higher toughness units as opposed to the lower toughness units. Right, let's now go to Tabletop Simulator quite quickly to sort of speak about a couple of key things. So the first one, which is pretty basic, is making sure Ursula Creed has got the maximum opportunity of actually giving out that -1 CP stratagem. So if we just place it here, for example, so this is Crucible the Battle, this is UKTC terrain layout. I think it's probably up to date overall. But the key thing is when you deploy her when the game begins, you want to obviously have her in a place where she can have a great old big fat sort of like free stratagem bubble, but then obviously balance with the fact you don't want to put her up against the line and maybe get a charge turn 1 and she dies and suddenly you've got no orders and then you basically lose that ability. So this is just a simple call out that do basically look at the deployment zone and work out where makes sense for her to be. So maybe, for example, you don't want to have her visible from this firing line here, so you have it tucked back a little bit, but that obviously means that her sort of free CP stratagem, free stratagem use will be a bit more limited, yeah? But 12 inches is really far, and as said, don't forget you can simply conga line. Let's pretend these Kasrkin are maybe, well, it's just something else. We just plonk them down there, for example, quite ugly and messy, but just having even that chap there within 12 means that if you want to throw a grenade here, you can do so for free. And then obviously, because there's a Voxcaster in there, you basically use that ability. On a 5-up, you're getting your CP for free, which is fantastic. Okay, now placement of and use of the melter mines and the remote mines. So given, which is absolutely fantastic, as said, the Def Corps engineers and the Kasrkin have got the scout keyword. As said, and you can look at the video I put in the top there, is this allows you to really set up an early game plan. So let's pretend you've got this Taurox with some chaps inside. Obviously you scout 6 up here, and then let's pretend you went first and you basically busted this thing out and it dropped the boys out of the school bus here. And this then basically means they're there. Now, 12 inches is absolutely fantastic. And I think this probably isn't the best place to put them, but just to sort of to illustrate the threat range you're now producing. And do think of this as indirect mortal wounds, because you don't actually have to see the target. Is 12 inches is basically threatening, you know, all the way out here, yeah? So this is not a good example given the terrain layout, but if I was to put them instead over here, and this is definitely where it becomes quite nice. If you put them in here, an inch off the wall, blah, 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 standard sort of procedure to make sure you're not chargeable through the wall. It basically means that if your opponent has staged units in here, they are at threat of copying D6 mortal wounds, or of course D3 plus 3 mortal wounds if they're a vehicle. So again, just pretending let's pretend you're playing into Space Wolves with Thunderwolf Cavalry, absolutely horrible to play into. They just bum rush you and clog up your entire army, and they put them in here, which would probably be something they do. They sort of put them in here behind cover, got them all nice and ready to go and start to chop stuff to bits. Is obviously even there, for example, they are within the threat range of your 12-inch remote mine, which is essentially indirect mortal wounds. They're very, very lovely. So 12 inches is obviously massive, as you can see here, and even if you go in there, for example, is you can basically touch a load of the board with 12 inches. Now the Kasrkin, obviously, as said, the melter mine with a 3 inch is a significantly shorter range, obviously 3 inches versus 12 for the remote mine, or 8 inches for the grenade stratagem is significantly lower. Now, as said, you want to basically be very, very deliberate where you put the melter bomb trooper. So I would typically, and it depends, obviously you've got to make this judgment call, but you know, if there's a unit here, for example, and you can only you give it move, you get 9-inch movement, and basically you want to place these chaps here, for example, with the melter mine first. So at least if your opponent decides to move here, even move there to basically maybe charge onto you, but maybe they don't want to move there because you could overwatch them. So they place themselves just here to basically mean they've got like a 2-inch charge. And given they're within 3 there, you could then at the beginning of the shooting phase, before the charge phase, you pop your D3 mortal wounds on a 2-up. So at least it can maybe 1 or 2 models, if you get lucky, of course. So yeah, then of course, again, just like the remote mine, is given that you don't have to see the unit. Imagine if there was a bunch of dudes sitting on this objective, is you could basically throw a melter mine through the wall, and suddenly you're doing D3 mortal wounds. And if they've got like a really weak character, only 3 wounds, you could pop a character quite nicely there. So yeah, that's pretty basic to sort of explain. The last one, of course, is tank shock. Now, let's just pretend this is not a Taurox, it's a Rogaldorn battle tank, and you've just hammered these Wolfen to bits, and you managed to kill, God forbid, well, it'd be lovely. Let's say you kill 6 of them. Yeah, you've put yourself an inch away from the. Let's put it here. Actually, this will be easier. Put yourself an inch away from these dudes. You bloody blast them to pieces and killed 6 wolfies and their riders. And then just for example, pretend this has got 4 wounds, not 5, a battle leader. And you're a Rogaldorn battle tank with 12 wounds. You ask your opponent their potential output, and you basically take a judgment call that you don't think 2 could kill you in 1 activation, but maybe over the course of a couple of turns they could. So you decide to tank shock. Now you're rolling 12 dice. Let's actually check. Let's see how lucky we get. So 12 dice. And I do find that TTS is very, very unlucky. I do roll loads of 1s. So let's just see. So let's see how many 5s we get. Bushya. So 5 mortal wounds. Bang. So that just instantly kills the doggo and the rider. It would actually kill the battle leader's got 5 wounds, but whatever. And that probably means that, I don't actually know what this Wolf Lord would do on Thunderwolf, but he's probably not going to kill a Rogel Dawn by himself over the course of 1 or 2 activations. So that's the thing is, you know, use tank shock where either a unit has got like 1 or 2 wounds left. So again, in that scenario, you could basically, let's pretend you're charging into a Demon Prince. You smash the Demon Prince with loads of Dakar, they've got 1 or 2 wounds left. That's where tank shock would make sense. Versus if the Demon Prince had 10 wounds, obviously that would be a bit foolish trying to basically do 10 mortal wounds because you're going to do 6, obviously. But yeah, that's probably where tank shock is the most powerful, was when it's something just got a couple of wounds left. And definitely I've had scenarios. I got desperate ones in the demons where I think I put the big lady demon, the big crazy looking lady. I think I basically put on 2 wounds, tank shot to Scout Sentinel and killed her, which was very satisfying, very, very satisfying. So yeah, hopefully this talk through does help. I do think it, you know, particularly with the Melter Mine and the Remote Mine, you want to be quite deliberate where you put them. But the key thing to sort of conceptualize in your brain is that, you know, the Remote Mine essentially is a 12-inch indirect mortal wound bomb, and likewise the Melter Mine on the Kaz is a 3-inch mortal wound bomb as well, which is absolutely awesome. Cool, so let's wrap this up. We'll go now on to this summary. Okay, so as said, Guard are spoiled for choice with the grenade and tank shock stratagem. So we've got loads of units with the grenade keyword. We've got loads of tanks, vehicles with high toughness, which is what you want to use the tank shock stratagem on. As said, you can damage things a unit couldn't normally do so. So either be it some jungle fighters shooting a Lord of Change, for example, or a Dreadnought, which would do 0 damage via those kind of flamers, or as said, a Rogel Dawn charging into combat. You can actually do damage as opposed to doing none. Definitely look for the right scenarios to be doing, utilizing this. Obviously the indirect mortal wounds you can do from the Melter Mine and Remote Mine are fantastic. But then the use of grenade and obviously tank shock is obviously something you should sort of be keeping in your back pocket, given you need to declare the grenade use first before you shoot a unit. Does sort of make you have to sequencing the shooting. And definitely I often actually would say if I've got a unit on an objective, I pop a tank out, a Limit Rust battle tank, and I'm not confident it's going to kill it. I'd also pop out just maybe 1 jungle fighter or Cadian shock troop who can actually see that target. I then plow in the tank, and if it does actually leave 2 dudes alive on the objective, then you throw a grenade to basically make sure you obviously clear them off the objective. Because definitely if you played enough Guard, I think I mentioned it earlier, is that Guard is not an army that's guaranteed to kill things. Again, as said, Bridgehead Strike Force, that detachment can delete things off the tabletop with the right units into the right targets. But across the rest of the army, we've all rolled, you know, 4 shots on Limit Rust battle tank. You hit twice, you wound once, they save that, and suddenly you're like, well, I've just done no damage on the main weapon. So definitely want to give yourself loads of, you know, supporting fire angles to basically make sure things die. And obviously mortal wounds are a great way to do that, to guarantee things will die. And then I said there's multiple ways to do this for free. As said, obviously you've got the Voxcaster, you can refund your CP. You've got Ursula, she can give you mortal wound output on Scout Sentinels, Armored Sentinels with tank shock or grenade other units for free. Of course, the Combat Engineers have got grenade for free as well. And as I said, which I got wrong last night, is if you do use this stratagem via them for free, you can't use it elsewhere, but still you're getting it for free, which is still bloody good. And of course, Remote Mine, Melter Mine are for free. They're once per game. You pay points, but you're not paying any CP to do so. So yeah, so hopefully helpful. I do think this is something that we should all be maximizing. As I said, it's funny when I play like at a tournament, and my opponent asks me my key stratagems. At the moment, I know which, moving to the new codex, if we just say tank shock and grenade, I'll just use them all game because they are my favorite stratagems. We have got more stratagems to consider now, obviously, as I said, with the new codex, but still I think they're 2 very powerful stratagems. And as said, once again, loads of units got the grenade keyword, so you should be throwing grenades left, right and center to clear the enemies of the Imperium with a hail of shrapnel. So yep, so if you enjoyed this video and want to support my channel, you can do so with a like, comment or by subscribing, joining my Patreon Platoon, or simply also becoming a channel member. I'm a true Astra Militarum variety, like I said. I cover everything from the lore of Astra Militarum, the tactics, and also the hobby aspect as well. Now, if I got anything wrong again in this video, please tell me, because it's good to hear from you, because you've got more brains than me. It's just one Jeff and there's multiple different people out there in the world. And likewise, if you've got any questions or comments how you maximise mortal wounds for guard, please let me know. Also, if you want to support me, you can simply go to the description below and buy some custom channel dice. I had these made by the Dice brand in America, so some lovely 60mm sharp edges dice, the correct plural. And just check out basically, just send me an email and I'll post them to anywhere in the world at a good price, given I'm not going through a payment provider. So I really appreciate the support all my patrons and channel members give me. To give you bayonet sharp, last gun oiled. Favourite from the Emperor strong. Patron platoon, sound off.
Tank Commander Glenn. Tank Commander Mitchell. Tank Commander Watchdog Van Etten. Lieutenant Burke Nielsen. Lieutenant Smith. Colour Sergeant DuPont. Sergeants Adal, Scott, the Colonel Merrill, Veteran Gibson, Hall, Lindeen, Guardsman Beard, Coquelin, Easing, Wood, Hills, Malik, Nitton, Nguyen, Tompkin, Conscript England, Evan Gunn, Goodwin, Honorary Members Bolgram King, Psyche Smith, Tempestus Cyan Gaylard.